Next, I'd like to go over just a little bit about what's happening with the legislature. Of course, the budget is the biggest thing, I think, the biggest issue that we are tracking right now. There's not a lot of substantive bills floating around out there. Both chambers have come out with their initial budget proposals, and I'm happy to report that in the context, and understand this is a historic economic downturn. Most of us have never experienced anything like this, and hopefully never will again. First time ever in the state of Florida that revenues have actually declined 3 years in a row. First time ever. Whenever I worked in the appropriations process, these down years, these years where we were having to make cutbacks, the issue then was that the revenue didn't quite grow enough to take care of Medicaid and the K through 12 school enrollment increase and all that. So you had to, so even though revenue was increasing, it wasn't quite as much as you needed to do everything, so you'd have to cut back in order to take care of those things that you have to take care of right off the top. Well, what we've experienced over the last 3 years, revenue has actually declined. The actual real dollar amount that they're having to work with this year is less than the dollar amount that they had to work with last year. That is extraordinary. To have that happen 3 years in a row is even more so. That's just never happened in a high growth state like we are. But we're doing pretty well. We're doing pretty well. The House budget came out. The initial House budget came out. It had $5 million worth of reductions. Put that in context of a $1 billion program. That's less than a 0.5% cut. Other state agencies were looking at a 15% reduction. And what the House had was actually a 0.5%. Under both the House and Senate budgets, we actually would see an increase to the overall bottom line of our budget. The Senate started out with a 3% across the board provider rate reduction, which caused us great concern, and there was a fair amount of testimony from myself and other, mainly provider interests. And I got word yesterday, in fact, that Senator Alexander, who is putting together the master budget for the Senate, decided to take that 3% rate reduction out of their budget. So the Senate no longer has that. So the Senate now, so both chambers now have a $5 million reduction. And again, I'm not going to go out and do cartwheels over that, but it's a whole lot better than what it could have been. A whole lot better than what it could have been. And of course, I think some of you realize that we did actually have a 5% across the board rate reduction that passed during the special session. And of course, the governor vetoed that. So I think that one message I want to give to you all is that the governor has been very, very supportive of the things that I've asked him to do on our behalf. And he's been supportive of this program. His budget recs didn't even include the $5 million that the House and Senate had, but he was working from a little bit different revenue estimate. He was working from a revenue estimate that was produced, I believe, in October, and then in those 4 or 5 months since then, the revenue estimate went down. And that's what the House and Senate are having to balance. In Florida, by the way, if you don't know, unlike the federal government, we cannot run a budget deficit. We have to, our budget has to balance to the revenues that are projected. A couple of things that I want to point out, because this is extraordinary. 0.5%, and like I said, other agencies are looking at anywhere from 5 to 15% reductions. And I believe the reason that the legislature has backed off, first and foremost, I believe really has a lot to do with the needs of the people we serve. I've been around a lot of politicians, I've been around a lot of legislators, and if there is one thing that even the most conservative Republican members, all the way to the most liberal Democrats, every one of them understand the need to take care of the people who are the most vulnerable in our society. So we have, in that respect, we have a real advantage, and that is simply the needs of the individuals that we serve. They understand that and are generally receptive to trying to serve those needs. I also believe that this has a lot to do with just the effectiveness of the advocacy community. Many of you all have come to Tallahassee, you've shown up, you've let your concerns be known, and these members understand that, they respect that, and they want to be responsive, and they have. I also believe it relates back to the fact that our community is working, we're working with each other a little bit better. We dismantled the circular firing squad that we had in place. So we're not, at least what I'm seeing in Tallahassee, is we're not taking as many shots at one another. We're starting to approach this as if we are in it together. The more we do this, and I want to tell you why that's important, because these members, these policymakers, whenever people that come to see them, there are people who represent folks that are elderly. There are people that represent children who are poor and need access to basic health care. There are the schools. There are all of these different people are coming, and they all have very compelling needs. And again, the legislature has to manage within a set, fixed amount, so that a dollar for our program is a dollar they will not have available to spend on their local school. It's a dollar they will not have to spend on their local senior center. It's a dollar they won't have to spend for health care for a child. Those are the kinds of decisions that they're having to make. So if you're having all these advocacy groups, and you're having to decide, well, now where am I going to invest my money? Are you going to invest your money in the group that comes in and they're fighting like cats and dogs and really can't articulate a good, clear message because they all contradict one another? Or are you going to decide to make your investment where the folks seem to have their act together, where they have a consistent message, where they're able to clearly articulate why their need should be a priority, even in light of all these other really pressing priorities that they're trying to work with and deal with. So I really believe that these changes that have taken place within the community have made a big difference, because we've been taking cheap shots at one another. I'm telling you, that would have, I think the outcome would have been totally different. And we do have a pretty good outcome here. I also think that, and again, as I've said, I think legislative leaders appear to have confidence in their agency now. We are, the numbers don't change without explanation from day to day. Just little things like that, I believe, are starting to give them confidence. And I think that the consistency of the message that our community is bringing also gives them confidence. And finally, as I mentioned before, I think we have the leadership of Governor Charlie Crist is also very much a factor that has worked in our favor. His budget recommendations, if you recall, had virtually no reductions to our program. The only one being an issue with durable and medical equipment, where we feel we can purchase those goods a little bit smarter and probably save some money without there being an undue adverse impact to anyone. So we are very happy for the support that we have gotten